clock. So, hello everybody. So nice to see you all, and thank you for coming tonight. My name is Lisa. I'm the director of the St. Louis Storytelling Festival, and I can show you where we are here. This is us. And normally this time of year, we would have storytellers going into schools and performance venues and all kinds of places and doing storytelling at the end of April and beginning of May. But of course, because of the pandemic and because of social distancing, we are keeping everybody safe, and we are doing storytelling virtually this year. So we are doing a virtual storytelling festival. And I want to thank our sponsors. First of all, the festival is the University of Missouri Extension Program. And I want to thank some of our sponsors here, Edward Jones, Mohila, KC Communications, and the MU Division of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. And I also want to thank our funders, the Missouri Arts Council and the National Endowment for the Arts, and our festival presenting sponsor, the Kranzbrook Arts Foundation. So big thanks to all of them for making this possible. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our storyteller for tonight, Mr. Ken Wolfe. And you'll get to see him here in just a minute. Ken is a wonderful storyteller. You never know if he's going to be telling the truth or if he's going to be telling something that you're just not quite sure if it's true or not. And he is an educator, and he works with scholars in middle and high school. And he also teaches a storytelling class at University of Missouri St. Louis. And he is involved with the Missouri Storytelling Organization, also known as MOTEL. And he has been a regional storyteller for the St. Louis Storytelling Festival for a number of years now, and we're always glad to have him with us. And so and I should also mention, he is a multiple winner of the Missouri Liars Contest. So that's important to know as well. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to Ken Wolfe, who's going to tell you, so you think you've heard this one before. So Ken Wolfe.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'm in my kitchen. I figured rather that than sitting in front of the computer or with the wall in back of me, actually I'd show you where the stuff happens, especially because when you think about it, in everybody's house, no matter where you are, you can set the dining room table beautifully, but everybody ends up in the kitchen, and that's where we tell our stories. So this is what I thought I'd do. But I don't know, I'm looking at my face and I'm getting kind of shadows. I have an idea. I'm just gonna open the fridge. There we go. That's better. We'll just leave that open for a while. I don't have much in there that'll go bad. If the sour cream goes bad, I'll know because it'll start insulting me. So if you listen to that, just let me know. I have two stories and a song to give you tonight. The first story is this. It's a story I tell my scholars, my 7th grade scholars, and also my college scholars as well. Sadly, this year I won't be able to do that because I won't have them in class again. We just found out from the governor. Thank you, sir. But here's the way it goes. A long time ago, before everything was worked out, before all the paperwork was done, what they did was they came up with a grid. They didn't know where all the animals were going to be. They didn't know where all the animals were going to have their habitats. They hadn't figured all that out. So they came up with a grid, a large grid that spanned for miles, and they were 15 by 15 foot sections, that each one of these animals had a certain section, a certain little grid square that they stayed in all day. Now, during the day, of course, they'd cross each other's grids and fly over each other's grids, but at night, they settled back down into their homes. This suited some animals really well and some not so much. And there was, in one of these grids, a little aardvark. Now, I don't know if you know much about what an aardvark looked like. He's not a winner in the animal kingdom. Not really at all. He's kind of stumpy. He's kind of squat. He's got long claws. He's got a long snout. He's got a little tongue that flicks out, this big, long, sticky tongue. It's almost hairless in this weird sort of way. Very pale, an odd-looking creature. His name, Aardvark, means earth pig. And so that's really what he is. He burrows down and stays under the earth and stays out of the heat. And that's what he did. He stayed inside his little hole. And while he was staying inside his hole all day long, he'd hear the other animals coming by. And being the way he was, he would compare himself to these other animals. And he would be down in his hole, and he'd hear the padding of the lion coming by, and he'd look, perch out of his hole, just peek a little bit, and he'd see the lion, and the lion would be going by, beautiful, majestic, with the mane and the fangs and the claws, and he was gorgeous, and he was regal, and he was just a really impressive animal. And the aardvark would say, oh gosh, there goes the lion. He's awfully cool and very, very majestic and kingly, and I'm just little aardvark. Nothing really. Which is true. Comparatively, he wasn't much. And he'd see the eagle fly over sometimes during the day. He'd see that shadow pass over the entrance to his burrow, and he'd look out, and there was the eagle, and it was gorgeous. It had this wingspan, and it just soared effortlessly in the clouds, and it just looked like authority, you know, it just looked impressive. And he said, oh gosh, there's the eagle. That's a beautiful animal, I'll tell you that much. He's really impressive. I'm just a little aardvark. I can't even get off the ground at all. Oh man. And it was true. He couldn't. And then the gazelles, every once in a while, if he was lucky, he'd see the gazelles leap over the front of the entrance of his little burrow, and they were like poetry. These sleek animals with their curly horns and their doughy eyes and the beautiful sleek and the tiny tapered little hooves down. Oh, it looked like they weren't even connected to gravity. They just soared. And he came out, he watched them, he said, oh, look at them go, the beautiful, beautiful gazelles. They're so graceful and poetic, and I'm just a stumpy old aardvark. And it's true, he was. And then he knew when the elephant was coming. He could feel it. Everybody could feel it, but underground, even more. The earth shook with every step. And he'd peek his little nose out, his little snout, and he'd say, oh, there goes the elephant. Oh, he's really impressive. What a great boon to man he is. Boy, he does all that heavy lifting and everything. And I can't do anything with my little snout. I can't lift anything. I'm just a little aardvark. And it was true. He wasn't. There wasn't much to him. It was a little bit sad. But let's not focus on the aardvark too long. Let's focus on the fact that the animal council who set out this whole grid, they thought of every animal they could think of, every one except for one. It was not a wise animal to forget. It's not really so much an animal. But if you own property, you know that if you forget this one animal, it could be bad for you. They forgot the termite and his wife. And they forgot to give the termite their 15 by 15 square. And so this termite couple, ambitious as they were, they settled down in the very corner of the badger's land, right down in there, just the corner. And they started setting up this tiny little house. You've seen them maybe in the summers, like those little mud piles that you see in the corners of sidewalks that you kick as you go by, and you watch the little ants scurry and you laugh a little bit. Well, you did that when you were a kid, sure. Well, it's just like that. One little house started just tiny. But of course, the badger knew exactly what would happen if he let this go. What you permit, you promote. And so he went out and visited the termites. And he came out of his hole. And he said, hey, termite, come out here. Come on. I got to talk to you. And the termite did. He came out and he said,
yeah, hey, how are you there, badger? Listen, we're just starting a little home here. I hope you don't mind.
Mind? Well, you bet I mind. You sure I mind? I know what you do. You move in, you start out with this, and you end up later on with something huge and massive. You can't stay here.
Yeah, but you see that, badger, we don't got land of our own until things get worked out. This is what we're gonna do. I promise we ain't gonna be any trouble at all. You're not gonna know we're here. It's gonna be just simple as pie. It won't be a problem at all. No.
Badger knew. He said, you move this little house down by the river where there's plenty of land. No one's got a square down by the river. You go down by the river, you move this house, or I'm gonna move it for you.
Oh, you are? Is that what you think?
Yeah, because you see this claw right here? This is the claw that's coming down. He said,
yeah, you got the claws. That's true. I ain't got no claws. But you see, I got teeth.
It was true. Back in the old days, termites didn't have the little nimbly little things they've got now. They had teeth. tiny serrated teeth, and when they bit, they locked, and when they locked, it hurt. And one little termite bite could swell and pulse, and it was awful and painful. Badger didn't know that.
Yeah, see, we got teeth. You don't want to hit me with that paw, I promise you.
Yeah? Well, you gonna move your house?
No, we're gonna stay here. We sort of like it here. Me and Margie, we're happy here. We're gonna stay.
All right, then you asked for it, and he drew that paw up, and he brought it down hard. But when he did, just as he did, the termite leapt up and bit him right there. Now, right there in that pad, kind of like the dogs have, sort of the same little pad that when you were a little boy or girl you used to play with, you know, while you're watching TV or something, and it smelled like Fritos, kind of like that. It was that same pad. We bit right into it, and it hurt, and he went, and the termite dropped off and fell back to his little home. He said, ow, 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 and it did. It pulsed and it burned and it bulged up, and he said, oh, 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 and he ran all the way down to the river and put his little paw into it. And it steamed from the pain. And the termite went back to building.
Hey, Margie, I think I took care of the badger. Let's get working.
And they did get working. The badger went to the animal council. And he complained, which he should have. He had a grievance. He complained and he said, hey, look at this. This is your fault, see, because you didn't give them the 15 by 15 square. Now it hurts. It really hurts, man. And the animal council said, whoa, you're right. My bad. That's wrong. We should have done it. We didn't do it. We'll take care of it. You better take care of it, or you better. He said, we'll do it. Okay. Badger left, satisfied, kind of. And the council said, what are we going to do? What can we do? And somebody in the back said, oh, you could send the lion. And they said, that's it, send the lion, because he's cool, see? And cool people, well, people like to be around cool people. And if cool people think you're cool, then you are cool. So he's got some influence. Let's do that. Yeah, send him. So they sent him. And by the time the lion got there, the termite house was not this big by this big anymore. No. It was this big and about this wide, and it was very fancy and ornate, really, if it done by two termites. And the lion, he patted over like lions do, sort of that, you know, the shoulder thing, like cats do, those big cats. And he came down and he sat down in that kind of a circle, like, you know, that half moon thing that they do. And he shook his mane out and he went, he roared and he showed his big, gorgeous fang teeth, and he stretched and those claws came out. And he said, yo, termite, come on out here, dude. We need to talk, man. Come on. And the termite came out. He said,
yeah, what do you want, Badger? Oh, well, you're a big kitty, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm a big kitty, right? Okay, so listen, man. You can't hang around here, dude. You can't, right? It's totally bogus. This isn't your land, man. This belongs to the badger. Dude, you're going to harsh the badger's meadow because you want your own home? Dude, he'll take care of it. The animal council's got you. But don't squat, man. A squatter's rights. That's no good. You got to go, man, or I got to move it for you. And the termite said,
you mean move our house, the one we just built, this one right here?
yeah, man, you got to go. There's just no choice, right? He said,
yeah, we're going to stay here, I think. We're going to stay. We kind of like it here. You know, we built a lot of rooms because we got kids, and those kids are starting to have kids. And we're not talking 5 or 6, no. We're talking 5,000 or 6,000. There's a lot of them right now, and we got to have a place for them to live. So we made all these tiny little rooms and everything with little rocking chairs. And it's lovely. You should come inside if you could, but you can't because you're too big. But still, we're gonna stay here. We could have liked it, I think so. Yeah.
And the cat had never been told no. No one said no to the king of the jungle, and especially not the king of the grid right now. And he said, no, right? Okay, you're like totally miscomprehending me, right? I'm not saying like you might want to go. I'm saying you've got to go right now. You've got to leave now. And he started to roar, and he showed those fangs. And the termite said,
Oh, yeah, those are big. Look at the big fangs on that one.
And right then, Margie came up, his lovely bride. And she came up right next to him, and she said,
Hey, Solly, what's going on? Hey, Margie, look at the big kitty.
"Ah!"
Boy, that's a big kitty. He's got big chompers, doesn't he? Yeah, he does, Margie. He's beautiful and everything. He wants us to move. Oh, Solly, we can't move. Yeah, that's what I told him, but he's not happy.
No, man, I'm not happy. And I'll tell you what, you don't move right now, I'm going to show you how unhappy. And he flipped up a paw, and this long talon came out from this furry. It looks all furry like a stuffed animal, but it was not a stuffed animal. It came out this blade, and he said, this is what I've got for you if you don't move your house, like voluntarily. No, right. And the termite said,
No, we're not going. So do your worst.
oh yeah, okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. And he brought that paw down right at the side of the termite hill, and it made a slice, just a paper-thin slice. And the termite looked down, he said,
Oh, you see, you shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. Oh, no.
and because right out of that slice, that little slit that he cut, there started to seep a strange amber-looking, it looked like liquid. It was just seeping out, and he said, oh, dude, what's like, you got syrup in there or something, man? Could go with some syrup right now.
No, it's not syrup. Sorry, big cat. No, it's those are my grandchildren. There's about 1 million of them, and they're coming out. There's about 1 million. You better watch out there.
But it was too late. It was too late because right then, those tiny termites started crawling up the lion's paw, coating it like a candy coating. And he said, dude, no, this is wrong. I don't like this, man. No. And he said,
All right, on the count of 3, kids, bite. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
and there was a and I want you to understand, every single one of these thousands, maybe millions of tiny termites had the same biting power as their papa. And when it all came down on one paw of that lion, he felt it to the bone. He went, oh, bogus, man. Oh, and he ran down to the river and put his paw in. And he started to float down the river, which was not good because down the river, that's where the crocodiles were. I hope he got out in time. And all the tiny little termites came back like a little fog, like a little liquid on the ground. And they came back up to the termite hill. And they sealed it all up. It was just like it was before. And Solly said,
All right, let's get back to work. Let's go.
and the animal council said, the lion didn't work? Why didn't the lion work? Well, what are we going to do now? And somebody said, you could send the eagle. Send the eagle. Because, see, the eagle's really smart. And people like to do what smart people tell them to do. Because if a smart person thinks you're smart, then you're smart. So absolutely, that's totally what you should do. Absolutely. So they did. They sent the eagle. And he went flying over. And by the time he'd gotten there, that termite hill was not this big by this big anymore. No. Now, this big by this big. And it was something that the eagle could actually land on. It was amazing. He came down with his talons and he dug right into the soil, the top and the roof of this massive hill. And the termite came out. He said,
Hey, who's putting holes in my roof? What's going on here?
And the eagle looked down. The eagle looked down and he said, all right, who's in charge here? I'd like to know quickly who's in charge.
Yeah, that'd be me, Mr. Eagle. I'm in charge here. My name is Solly, the termite. Hey, what's the big idea? You're putting holes in my roof.
Oh, right. You're in charge. Yes, the bug. Yes, I've heard about you. Listen, the animal council sent me to tell you that you can't stay here. This domicile, as you call it, is certainly not good enough to take over Badger's land, and you've got to move down by the river, and that's the decision. You must. And he said,
No, see, it's bigger now. We got the kids growing and everything. We built some playgrounds, and we got a Build-A-Bear in there. It's amazing, and we got all sorts of. There's frozen yogurt, and there's a slide, and a swimming pool, and everything. I kind of like it here. I don't think we're gonna move. I think we're gonna stay. Sure, we're gonna stay.
and Eagle said, you can't stay. You don't understand. It's been decided. Wiser people than you have decided that you must leave down by the river.
schmize. You're not so smart. I'm going to stay here with my bride and my children and my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren now. So sorry.
Well, you've got to leave, or I'll make you feel small. Watch this. 1, 2, 3. What do you think?
Oh, that's really amazing. You're really cool. You look like money or something. But I'm already small, see? So it doesn't really matter. You're putting more holes in my roof. That's no good. So, you should probably get up.
I'm not going anywhere till you agree to be wiser and smarter than you are, you ignorant bug.
Did you call me ignorant? You talking to me being ignorant? All right, kids, come on up.
And right from those holes that eagle had put into the side of that, or the roof of that termite hill, there came that liquid again. And went right up the talons, and right up the body, and down the wings, and over the head. And he said, oh, this is not comfortable. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. What's going on? 1, 2, 3, go, kids. And there was a... Oh, that bird. That bird thought it knew pain, but it learned new things about pain that day. It shot off like a rocket with a searing pain. Mold it smart! Shot up and landed all the way down in the river. And while he shot up, the weight of those termites, that sticky, messy termite population, it pulled off all the feathers from its legs, and all the feathers from its body, and all the feathers from its wings, and from its head, it became the first bald... Yes, exactly right. The first bald eagle, and landed into the river with a splash and a bobbing like a cork all the way down to where the crocodiles were. It served him right, really. And that syrupy mix of grandchildren and great-grandchildren went all the way back onto the land and up to the house and fixed the roof.
All right, kids, good job. Good job. Let's go get some waffles.
And they went downstairs. And the animal council said, what next? What can we do? What can we do? And somebody said, oh, send the gazelles. See, because the gazelles are really, really beautiful. And beautiful people. People love to be around beautiful people, because if someone who's attractive thinks you're attractive, then you've got it made. Send the gazelles. Send the gazelles. And so he did. They did. They sent the gazelles. But by the time the gazelles got there, that termite house was not this big by this big. No. Now, this big, and well, from here to the ground, that big. It was massive. And those gazelles showed up, and they just kind of leapt into the space, and they started leaping and walking back and forth. And as they walked, they just kind of looked at the termite hill. Oh, Mr. Termite, would you come out here, please? Would you come talk to us, please? And the termite came out.
Yeah, what do you want? I told you already, Eagle. Oh, hello, gazelles. How are you?
So glad to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming out. Hey, listen. This is something we just got to fix. Would you be willing to think about maybe, I don't know, moving your house down to the river just for us, just this once? It's a beautiful home. Did you build this?
Yeah, well, I had some help and everything, but I built it myself. I'm kind of handy.
I know you are. Look at you, big and strong termite. Would you though? Would you just move down by the river, just your house and your whole family and your life, down by the river where there's so much room? Because the animal council, they just don't know what to do. Could you help us? And right then, Solly's wife, Margie, came up because she knew there were visitors, and she said,
hey, Solly, what's going on with that?
Oh, hello, gazelles. They said, hi, Mrs. Bug. Listen, we were just talking to your husband about moving your house down by the river, and he's thinking about it.
Solly, are you? Well, Margie, if the ladies here, they're saying that,
And he looked down at his beautiful termite bride, with whom he'd built this wonderful life. He looked deep into her compound eyes, And he remembered. And he said,
You know what? Gazelles, you're nice. You're beautiful. Empirically, who could argue? You're totally beautiful. Absolutely. With your horns and the eyes and the little sleekness and everything. You're gorgeous. But you know what? You're not my Margie. This is my Margie. What, thanks all year, Marge. This is my Margie. She's my bride. She's my life. She's everything I need. You know, you got nothing I need. You're beautiful. Get a magazine cover. But, you know, we're going to stay here. We built a life. We're going to grow this life even more.
Well, these beautiful animals had never been told no before, and they were shocked. But how can, yeah, go on home. We'll see you soon. Yeah, but wait, I'm beautiful. Oh yeah, you are. I agree. You totally are. But I'm beautiful. And the one next to her said, I'm beautiful. Shut up. I know you're beautiful, but so am I. Well, I am, but you didn't. And they started to rear on each other with those tiny, sharp little hooves. They reared up and, I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful. And they started to lock horns and just scramble around each other. I'm beautiful. Shut up. I'm beautiful. They started to pull blood and make cuts and all sorts of things. It was getting nasty. It was getting hard. And she said, I'm sorry. Margie, come on downstairs with you. And they just kept going and going. And soon they were punching tiny little hoof holes right in the base of that massive termite hill. And you know what happened. That's right. From each of those little holes came more and more of this viscous, fluid-looking stuff, and it was millions and millions of the babies, and they went up those tiny legs, and they went up onto the sleek bodies, and up onto the beautiful heads and the curly horns, and they went all the way up. And on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, there was a crunch. Help me with the crunch. 1, 2, 3. Yes! And the does looked at each other, these gazelles looked, and they went, oh, and then leaped in one giant leap, never touching the ground until they landed into the river, shedding tiny termites, like a contrail of termites that fell back down to the ground, and they landed in the river, still shouting to each other, I'm beautiful, I am, and they're swimming and trying to swim, and floating down the river to where the crocodiles were. What happens to beautiful people sometimes. And all those termites came back up and filled up the holes. And the animal council said, what next? We're running out. We're running out of ideas here. Somebody in the back said, you could send the elephant. He'll do it quick. They said, yes, because he's powerful, right? He's powerful. And powerful people like to be around, and other people like to be around powerful people. If a powerful person thinks you're powerful, you're set. So they sent the elephant. And by the time the elephant was sent, Termite Hill was not this by this. No. Now it was all the way up there and all the way from over there to all the way over there. It was massive. Massive. And the elephant went up to that termite hill. And his eye was right at the top of that termite hill. And he said, hey, termites, come on out here. We got to talk, guys. You can't be doing this. You can't be doing this at all. Come on out. And the termite came out. He said,
oh, yeah, what is it? Oh, you're a big boy, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm a big boy. Hey, listen, I don't want to be the guy to tell you this, but you can't stay here. This place is huge. You can't stay. Badges, he's got no land. Look at him. He's in the corner. And he was shivering in the corner. You can't stay. You got to go. And I know you want to stay. It's beautiful. But down by the river, there's plenty of room. Why don't you go down there?
That's a thought. Let me consider it. So we're going to stay here. We built a huge life here. We got hotels now. We got this beautiful strip where you can't, you ride little bicycles and everything, get ice cream cones. It's lovely. We got an airport for the out-of-town visitors and everything. We're really enjoying living here. We're not going to go anywhere, I think so. We're going to stay right here. Sorry, Mr. Big Elephant Pachyderm Man. Sorry.
All right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Since you don't seem to understand what's at risk here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a taste of what I got for you. Just a taste. If you like it, I got plenty more. If you don't, I got plenty more. You understand me? You move or be moved. So here it comes.
Yeah, you're thinking with your tusk again, Mr. Elephant. You can't do that. You can't do that. You're really going to regret this.
Yeah, I'm going to regret this. Watch this. And he lifted up one massive, round, flat foot, and he brought it down hard. Ka-boom! Right there at the very base of the termite hill. And the whole place shook like a plate of Jell-O, just shook. He said,
Yeah, let's see. Now watch.
and he couldn't get it out. It's a big deal here. I can't get it. And finally, when he pulled it out, there was this perfect hole, big too, and deep, right at the base. And there was a rumbling, and soon, a geyser of this amber liquid, looked like liquid, came down on top of the elephant. He said, "Hey, what's the big deal here? What's it got? What they got amber? What is this, soap?" He said,
No, see, I told you, those are my kids. Hey, grab a piece of gray. Go ahead.
They all came down and coated him from head to toe, and it took 3 huge bites to get through that thick gray skin. You ready for 3 huge bites? 1, 2, 3. Good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And the elephant went, oh, and he rolled all the way down to the river, landed in the river with a huge splash, washing all the termites off, and floated down the river with just his trunk out of the water going, oh, crying the whole way. Well, all those termites came back up, and they filled in that hole with no problem, and it was fixed. And once it was fixed, the animal council thought, what are we gonna, we're sunk. We're totally sunk. He's gonna take over, and then the kids are gonna go out, and they're gonna take other. This is no good. This is just no good. And somebody said, you could send the Aardvark. And they went, please, really? Who else really do we have? Fine, we'll send the Aardvark. And the Aardvark didn't want to go. He really didn't want to go. He'd heard the screams, and he knew what had happened. But he was a citizen, and he was a good citizen, and he did his duty. And so he went over there. He went over, and now that thing was just as tall. You could barely even see the top. And he walked up, and he stretched his little neck up, and he looked, and it was all the way up there. And he said, well, Mr. Termite, sir, can I come up, or can you come out, or something? We need to talk. And the termite came out.
Yeah, what is that? What?
Down here, sir.
What? We need to talk? All right, here we go.
Yes, sir. I have an order from the Animal Council to ask you to cease and desist of all domestic activities and to move this lovely abode down by the river where there's a lot more room, sir. And I've asked you to do that, and now I've done my duty. Please don't hurt me too badly. And the termite said,
yeah, well, you had this coming. All right, he's not big. I just need a washcloth-sized squadron. Ready? Come on over.
and out of the top of that termite hill there was, and came over the top, a squadron of these little termites that came over, and they were about the size of a washcloth, just over the top, and they went down the side, and he saw it. He said, oh gosh, this is gonna hurt, and he tensed up, and he said, oh, no, and the funniest thing happened. Right before they reached the tip of his snout, it was a reflex. It was involuntary. He didn't mean to do it. It was kind of like when you walk out of a movie theater in the middle of the day into the sunshine and you go and you sneeze. It was the same thing. His tongue shot out and lassoed up this washcloth-sized serving for him and went, hey, you guys are good. And the termite said,
oh, no, come on, blanket size, beach towel.
and a beach towel size went all the way down the side. He went, oh, now, come on. And just the same, came right there and and he started to pat the ground in anticipation of the next. Oh, delicious. And when he did, his hard bone claws started scratching at that that soft earth of the termite hill and started to burrow. He went, oh yeah, and soon he went down under. And for a moment there was nothing. And then he came out the top. More. Went down in pieces of earth are flying, dust clouds are flying. Oh no! And soon the whole thing went and flew apart. Only 3 creatures survived. On one side, Solly and Margie were thrown clear, and they landed right next to each other. And Margie looked up and she said, "Solly, what happened? What happened?" And Saul said, "Margie, I think he ate our children. He destroyed our home. But we're alive. We can start over. Yeah. Solly, let's start over down by the river. Wouldn't that be good? Yeah. Margie, let's start by the river. Let's do that." And they did. They went down to the river where there was plenty of land and plenty of room. And the other animal that was thrown clear was the aardvark on the other side. And he said, "Oh, no problem. You just let me know when dinner's ready. I'll be right over. Y'all are delicious." And here's what I want you to know from this. You see, the aardvark didn't have much going for him, and all he did was compare himself to other animals. Now, if you haven't done that yet, you probably will start comparing yourself to other people. But understand, though he wasn't cool and he wasn't powerful and he wasn't beautiful and he wasn't all that smart, the aardvark was exactly equipped for his calling, for exactly what he was supposed to do. None of the other animals could do what he was naturally equipped to do. And you can compare yourself to other people, but there is something that you are supposed to do, something that nobody else is going to do as well as you do. Your job is not to compare yourself to other people, not to compare yourself to the eagles and the lions and the elephants and the gazelles. Yours is to be the aardvark. Find that thing. And it may take you no time. It may take you your whole wide life. Find that thing that you are called to do, that you're equipped to do, and do it and thrive in it. Let the eagles be eagles and the lions be lions and the gazelles be gazelles and the elephants be elephants. You be the aardvark. And when later on, when you're thriving in this thing, other people will not see you as an aardvark. They'll see you as an eagle or a lion or a gazelle or an elephant. Now, I believed in this so much that when I turned 40 and a lot of men started to despair about how they spent their lives, I put on my arm the aardvark to remind myself every day, I just need to be the aardvark. I'm going to put him up there. That's all I need to be. That is the story of the aardvark and the elephant. And the ants, not the elephant, the termites. So I wanted to mention to you, you might have been wondering, I wanted to mention that we're supposed to be interactive, or try to be interactive. I thought about how to be interactive. And I thought 2 things. One, we're not supposed to touch our faces at all. Isn't that correct? Not if you say, that's true, right? We're not supposed to touch our faces. But no one says you can't touch my face here. Go ahead. Poke me. Poke. Get, on the side. Fine. Yes. Okay, stop. Okay, now stop. And the other thing I was thinking about was, this is kind of like television, except that, television is a one-way medium. This is a two-way medium. If I really had been prepared, I could do like a Dora the Explorer kind of thing, Do you guys know Dora the Explorer? And we could do this whole thing where you could help me find my backpack or something, and that could be something we could totally do. But I wasn't prepared. I don't really have one really to look for. So what? Where? No, I can't hear you. Guys are all muted. So I wasn't prepared. We won't do that part. That's all right. One more story I wanted to tell you had to do with my growing up in a small town. My friend Henno Head tells this story also. He tells it better than I do. But when I was growing up, I really wanted a nickname. Raise your hand if anybody here has a nickname that they go by. Do you? Lucky. See, lucky. Where I grew up, everybody had a nickname except for me. And in fact, everybody's nickname was, you got it from something you loved or something you hated, something you're scared of, something you enjoyed, whatever. And I wanted a nickname. To me, the name Ken always seemed sort of weak. And Ken. I wanted something like Duke or Floyd or Clyde or something like that, but I never got it. But at my school, the people who got nicknames, it stuck so strongly when they got their nickname that sometimes people forgot each other's real names. They stuck. And in fact, I remember this being true because at our graduation, and we're in the gymnasium, and everybody's wearing the gowns, and they get the mortar boards with the tassels on one of the two sides. I can't remember. It goes across or spins on the top. I don't remember. But we're all dressed to the nines, and we're all ready. And the superintendent is up there with the principal, and they're naming off people's names, and we go up and we shake a hand, another hand, and get our diploma and everything. That was all fun, but they said a name. They said Edward Emmett Wilson III. Sounded very fancy. No, none of us knew who that was until something happened that made us remember. See, when I was growing up until 6th grade, it was one classroom, the elementary school classroom, which was great. You stayed with one teacher all year long, which if the teacher was good, that was fantastic. If the teacher was not so good, it was a long year. And the only time you got out of that room was when you went to specials. And specials were things like music or art or gym or library. We went to library sometimes. And my teacher in my 6th grade year was very, very strict. Very strict. She would line us up at the door when it was time to go to specials. She'd line us up at the door and she'd say, "All right, quiet now," as you go through the hallways. And we'd walk in the hallways on those gray tiles. You ever notice how schools always have those 2 sets of gray tile striping in the hallways? We walked on those gray tiles. And if anybody made any noise at all, anything, a cough, a burp, a little anything like that, she'd say, "All right, stop." And she'd turn us around, single file, turn us around, walk us all the way back to the classroom. She'd walk us around the outside of the classroom and then line up at the door again and say, "Ready?" Sure, we'd walk again in total silence until somebody went, "All right, stop." And the same thing, it could take all day to get to art. All day. Now, one of these days, we were walking down, I think it was art actually this day. We were walking to art and everything was silent and we were just walking along. And I don't think he was doing it to be funny. I think he was doing it for himself. There was a kid behind me, right behind me, who just started going under his breath. And she said, "All right, stop." And then she didn't say anything. We didn't turn around single file. Have you ever seen a teacher who thought something was hilarious but couldn't show it? Her shoulders just kind of did this. And then she said, "All right, let's go." And we started walking. And 3 steps in, again, 3 steps. All the way to art. And then all the way back. She didn't say a word. From day to week to month, all the way through 6th grade. That's what he did. And she didn't stop him. Now, because of that, and because he got famous because of that, they gave him a nickname. And his nickname was Gearshift. And that's who he was. That's who Gearshift was. And all that year, he got better and better. He had different models of car. He had different engines. He tuned everything. It was amazing how good he was at this. Now, that was the 6th grade year. 7th grade was middle school or junior high back then. Now, most kids who have some weird trait or habit in 6th grade in elementary school, they generally outgrow it by the time they get to the middle school, but not Gearshift. He didn't grow out of it. He grew into it. And now he was getting into it now, because before it was the same classroom all day long and few times to get practice, but now every 45 minutes the bell would ring. And he would take off down out of the room and right out loud, zipping through traffic, carrying his books in his left hand so he could shift with his right and keep going. Just zooming in. Pardon me, baby. Keep going. Well, this became kind of a culture in our 7th grade hallways. So much so that people would stop. When there were intersections in the hallways, people would kind of slow down and stop and listen for Gearshift because he was coming. You wouldn't get hit by him. And if he'd go around a corner, now sometimes he'd be polite and he'd stop at the intersection. Other times, if he was in a hurry, he'd just drift. And you had to be careful. You had to be really careful. Now, and the other thing too, he got so into it that he wasn't like the rest of us. The rest of us, you know, when we had a shoelace that would untie, you'd kind of get down by the lockers and put your books in and tie your shoe and hope not get kicked by anybody else. He didn't do that. He came in for a pit stop. And he reached down to his shoe and used the pneumatic thing. Tie it up. Take off again. And we got into this too because, you know, it's just who he was. At the end of the day, there was one day, you remember having to go to the bathroom right at the end of the day and you think, oh, I can totally make it. And that last 10 minutes is the killer. It was the same way for Gearshift this day. He was just floating. His teeth were floating. He had to go so bad, he was bouncing in the seat. And finally, the clock went to 3, and he went, and it went. He got up, shot out of the door, and when he hit the hallways, he turned on the siren, and we all pulled over to the right to let him go by. We totally did. Now, he had established himself, and established himself as a pretty good scholar too. He did his work. He got his homework done. His grades were okay. And his parents were so proud of him for being good at something, anything really, that they decided to reward him at the end of the year. And they said to him, Gearshift, because it got home too. They call him that there. He said, Gearshift, you've done well this year. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you the opportunity to go to Memphis, Tennessee with us. Memphis, Tennessee, to the National Drag Racing Finals. What do you think? And he was beside himself with joy because of two things. Memphis, Tennessee, first of all, was out of town, and nobody ever went out of town. And secondly, it was the National Drag Racing Finals. He'd be sucking in tire fumes and engine exhaust. It'd be joy and heaven for him. And third, it took place right after Labor Day, which was the first week of school. He got to skip the first week of 8th grade, skip it entirely. We were so jealous, all of us. We started walking around our house going, wah, 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 and our parents said, oh, shut up, you're not Gearshift. So the first week of school came after a summer that was pretty boring. And that first week of school, things happened as they always do. We meet each other in the hallways again. We've seen each other through the summer, and the guys see each other and go, hey, how's it going? Yeah, good, all right. And the girls see each other, you look so wonderful. Everybody came with their one new thing, right? Their new shoes, or their new jeans, or the new binder, or the trapper keeper, or their new whatever, the pencil box, whatever it was. And we just got used to being in school again. And the one way we did that was to do kind of intel for each other, reconnaissance, if you will. At the end of a class period, if I had social studies and you had science, I'd come and say, okay, social studies. He's kind of tall. He's not really great to look at. And if he talks too long, he gets that kind of a froth right here in the corner of his mouth. Don't look at him before lunch. You don't want to do that. Yeah, totally. And you might tell me, okay, science, she seems to know what she's talking about. And she got a really high-pitched voice, so get used to that. Okay, cool. But no one would talk to me at lunch about English. No one. I asked. And no one would say a word. I'd say, okay, tell me about English. I'll tell you all about social studies. And they went, like they were shell-shocked or something, you know, PTSD all over the place. And I said, come on, you're making me nervous. What's the deal? And they said, no, I don't want to talk about it. And so they didn't say anything. So when I got to English, I kept my head down. You know, it's what you got to do. I had my books, and I just kept my head down. I walked into the room without even looking anywhere, and my friend Munchie was in the back. So I sat right in front of Munchie. There was an empty seat, and I sat down, and when I looked up, there she was, sitting behind the desk. Mrs. Ophelia Battle was her name. She was intimidating. She was perhaps the largest teacher and most imposing that I've ever seen. Now, I know it's an old vaudeville thing to say that when she sat behind her desk, she sat behind her desk, but that's the way it was. She really did. She took up all of that room, and she wore this blue floral dress with a lace collar, but it didn't matter. She didn't have a neck. The head just kind of like right there on the top, and she had a bun that was pulled back tight, so she had this Gloria Swanson thing looking at us. And if you kind of squinted your eyes, she looked sort of like a field of blue flowers with a boulder just landed right in the middle there. And she drummed her big fingers on the desk. And we didn't know what was going on. And she looked really evil. And she just gave us that look, that look, like that. So we just kept really quiet. And the seat in front of me was empty. And right as the bell rang, this girl, Nancy, came in. Nancy was kind of a social butterfly, and she came in just talking. Oh my gosh, and she found her seat right in front of me, and I was like, don't talk. I couldn't get my locker open, and I really hate when I can't get my locker open, so I asked the teacher, and I didn't know what the teacher's name was, but he was really nice and everything. So I finally got my locker open, and so here I am. And we looked, and she didn't see it. Nancy didn't see it, but we all saw it. Battle stood up, and the chalkboard disappeared. And she reached down behind her and she grabbed this yardstick. It was a broken yardstick. And for about a half a second, I thought to myself, broken yardstick, why is it broken? And then she showed us. She brought that broken yardstick around in a 360 arc and she brought it down on the top of her desk. Wham! And she pointed it right at Nancy. And she said, hey, you there, you shut up. It was the most embarrassing thing Nancy had ever endured. She turned beet red and slunk down into her seat. And we couldn't believe it. What teacher ever talked like that? They were supposed to talk like that. And Battle sat back down, and we all kind of, and that's how she ran things. That's totally how she ran things. Now, it doesn't sound the same, just in my memory, it doesn't match my voice. So when you hear Battle do her battle cry, do it with me. It'll make you feel good, I think, maybe, I don't know. And that's how she ran things. It had to be totally silent. She'd have 4 or 5 worksheets on her desk. That's how it was. And you came in quietly, and you grabbed a worksheet, and you walked back to your desk quietly, and you started to write on the worksheet, and you had to do it very carefully, because if your pencil was too sharp, and it made that scritchy scritch noise, she hated that noise. Wham! Hey! You there! You shut up! Oh my gosh, and if it was too dull, if your pencil was dull and it made that tappy tap noise, she hated that noise. Wham! Hey! You there! You shut up! Oh my gosh. It was terrifying. It was beyond, we couldn't tell our parents about it. We couldn't tell anybody. And it was really scary. Now, by the time the second week started, she had us totally trained. I mean, trained. It was silent in that room. One kid had his pencil come out of that dumb little pencil tray at the top of the desk, and it came rolling down. And sure enough, he was trying to stop it. We said, no, you got it. He was sort of, no. So it was like one of those dreams you have where you just can't escape the monster because you're stuck in glue. No, and just kept going, tick, 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 tick. It landed on the ground, ting, 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 ting. She hated that noise. Hated it. Wham! Hey, you there! You shut up! Oh my gosh. Monday of the second week. This was before air conditioning. We had the windows open. We were all working. It was silent. You could hear a fly thinking in the next room. It was that quiet. The door was open for trying to get a cross breeze. Our hands or our arms were sticking to our desks and our worksheets. And then we heard in the hallway, we knew he was back. He was back. Oh, back. We couldn't look away. It was like a car wreck. You can't not look. And we knew what was going to happen. And sure enough, he came down the hallway. We heard him come around the corner. Got louder and louder. And he came in and he had his books in his hand. He had that little pink slip. He went right past her desk. And he threw it on the desk. Said, there you go, baby. I went past her. And now Nancy had moved away to the far end of the room. And so there was that empty seat in front of me, and he had to sit right in front of me. Thank you very much, Gearshift. And he couldn't just sit, could he? No, he had to parallel park And of course, just like you always do, he missed the first time. And he finally got it, and he sat there for a second, just letting it idle. And he turned the key. Bam! He said, I gotta get a tune-up. He looked around at us. We were terrified because he hadn't seen it. We saw it coming, and we knew it was coming, and it did. She stood up like a dirigible out of a what do you call that thing? And it just came up and it blocked it, and she just stood up and she went, "What? Hey, you there! You shut up!" I had never seen it before outside of cartoons. But this boy lost all color in his face, just to a gray all the way down. And he'd never been talked like this. The adults liked him. The teachers thought he was cute. I'm cute. This is cute. This is my thing. You like that? And she was not liking it. And then she sat back down. We said, and then the crimson came up, all the way up, and his eyes narrowed to keep the murder in his head. And he just looked, and he looked at her. He just looked at her. And at lunch, he said, I'm going to get her. I'm going to get her if it's the last thing I do. And we said, no, Gearshift, you can't get her. You can't get her. He said, it's the last thing I do. We said, no, Gearshift, see, if you get her, it'll be the last thing you do. Don't do it. Don't do it. But he was resolved. The funny thing was, he was a perfect scholar for the next 2 months. Got his worksheets done before all the rest of us. Had his pencils sharpened just so. Oh, sure, he came down the hallway still in the engine. But when he got to her door, he cut the engine and just coasted in. And he parked. And he was perfect. Until February. February, Mrs. Battle did something we'd never seen her do before. She smiled. She actually smiled. We hadn't seen her teeth. We weren't sure she had any. She smiled and she said, all right, children, today we're going to learn the adverbs. We didn't buy it. We didn't buy it for a second. She said, come on now, adverbs. Here we go. And she stood up. And we were ready to run. But she stood up and she said, how, who, where, to what extent? She said with me, how, who, where, to what extent? We weren't moving, but there's always that one kid. Our kid's name was Bobby. I think that was his nickname, actually. Bobby's that one kid who'll do anything to make the laugh in the class, right? So he went, and he stood up, he said, how, who, where, to what extent? And she went, good! And we went, oh, okay. So we all carefully stood up. And she said, now with me, how, who, where, to what extent? And we went, how, who, where, to what extent? Which you should do too. She said, good. And she turned sideways, kind of swiveled like that. And she started to walk. We didn't know she had legs. She started to walk. When she started moving to the side, out from behind her desk, which we'd never seen again, and she started pushing the desks on the inside to kind of make room for herself on the outside of the class, because she really did need that. And she said, how, who, where, to what extent? And we went, how, who, where, to what extent? And she turned the corner and she started pushing the desks on this side and pushing and making a path almost all the way around. She got up to the side with the windows going, how, who, where, to what extent? And we went, how, who, where, to what extent? And see, finally she'd gotten all the way around, almost all the way around to her desk. And my gosh, it was like a track that went all the way around. And then we heard it coming up from behind. From the very end of the line, we heard, we thought, oh, he's coming up. And she heard him too. And he went, and he started to pass us. We went, how, who, where, to what extent? He passed us right up past her too. And she was right there at the board. She picked up that yardstick because it was right there. And she brought it down. Wham! She pointed at him. Hey, you there. you shut up. And he wasn't shutting up. Whoa, right again. She said, hey, you there. You shut up. We went, how, who, where, to what extent? Now he was on the far side of the wall and she was trying to make it around. She was going, hey, wham, you, wham, there, you, wham, shut up. And we went, how, who, where, to what extent? He was circling now. He was jumping up on the radiator next by the windows and down again, going faster, shifting gears. He was now in fifth gear. Overdrive. Lapping her. She thought she'd go to the other side of the classroom, so she started to push her way through the desks, making the way in the middle, so maybe she could catch him, but he was too fast. He was just going. He was going around. She went, hey, you there. You shut there. You up. And we went, how, who, where, to what extent? Let's help him out. How, who, where, to what extent? Big Mama. How, who? And she started going, yeah, her bun came loose a little bit, and she started to wobble slightly, and he kept going, and she went, hey, you there, shut you up. He didn't stop. He kept going around and around. She was on the floor just breathing. She was still breathing, but just barely. And he said, let's go, gang. He got us by the door. Let's go. Out the hallway. He kept popping wheelies and double clutching all the way out. We went, how, who, where, to what extent? All the way out to the parking lot, all the way where the bike racks were. Oh my gosh, you guys, it was the best day of 8th grade. The very best day of 8th grade. And some years later, at the high school, at graduation, we were all decked out and we heard Edward Emmett Wilson III. And we thought, Edward Emmett. And we heard, it was Gearshift. That's who it was. Well, I have run out of my time. I'm over time, am I not, Lisa? By a little bit?
Yeah. You are, but that's okay.
Well, I have a short song I'd like to end on. I don't know if there are any of my kids watching this or any young ones. It's a little bit, it's just ever so slightly off color. It's very, 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 very subtle. Very, very subtle indeed. I don't think it'll go right over the kids' heads. And frankly, if it doesn't, that's not my fault, I don't think. So, I'd like to perform this last thing for you. After I do this. What backpack? It's called the Scotsman. Mike Cross performed this first. I'm going to try to sing after Gearshift. It's going to be tough. A Scotsman clad in kilt left a bar one evening fair. One could tell from the way he walked he drunk more than his share. He wandered off until he could no longer keep his feet, and he stumbled off into the grass to sleep beside the street. Ring ding dee 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 oh, ring di dee lo dee. He stumbled off into the grass to sleep beside the street. And later on, 2 young and lovely girls just happened by. One says to the other with a twinkle in her eye, see yon sleeping Scotsman, so strong and handsome built. I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath the kilt. Ring ding dee 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 oh, ring di dee lo dilt. I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath the kilt. They crept up to the sleeping Scotsman, quiet as could be, lifted up the kilt above the waist so they could see, and there, behold, for them to view beneath his Scottish skirt was nothing but what God had graced him with upon his birth. Ring ding dee dee oh, ring di dee lo dearth was nothing but what God had graced him with upon his birth. Well, they marveled for a moment, then one said, we must be gone, but let's leave a present for our friend before we move along. So as a gift they left a blue silk ribbon tied into a bow around the bonny star of that Scots kilt lift and show. Ring ding dee dee ring di dee lo do, around the bonny star of that Scots kilt lift and show. Well, the Scotsman woke to nature's call and he stumbled toward the trees. Behind a bush he lifts his kilt and he gawks at what he sees. And in a startled voice he says to what's before his eyes, my friend, I don't know where you've been, but I see you've won first prize. Ring ding dee dee oh, ring di dee lo die. My friend, I don't know where you've been, but I see you've won first prize. And it has been my pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me tell tonight.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Ken. That was a lot of fun. So this is Lisa again. Hi, everybody.